On today's episode, a bonus episode from last season, Elite Pit Crewing with Gina Estrada.
This is the world's toughest podcast. Welcome to the world's toughest podcast, where we talk about any obstacle course race you'd like, as long as that's world's toughest mudder. Each week we talk to members of the WTM community and share stories of success and failure in the single greatest event in OCR. My name is Will Hicks, and this is the world's toughest podcast.
Welcome back to World's Toughest Podcast. My name is Will Hicks. Are you listening to all 3 episodes today as we air them? If so, you are awesome. Maybe you're on the plane heading to Atlanta right now. Maybe you're driving right now. Wherever you are, I am glad to have you back. Welcome to World's Toughest Podcast. My name is Will Hicks. Thank you for listening. You are listening to the number 1 rated obstacle course racing podcast in the world because of listeners like you leaving ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts and Amazon.com. This is the 3rd of our 3 bonus episodes today from last year that we are replaying. The first episode was How to Not Die at World's Toughest Mudder, talking about overhydration. The second was What to Eat the Day of World's Toughest Mudder, talking about nutrition. This episode is on Elite Pit Crewing with Gina Estrada. Gina has worked pit for Ryan Atkins, Lindsey Webster, Allison Ty, and many other of the top OCR athletes in Tough Mudder and Toughest Mudder. Elite Week starts tomorrow. We're going to talk with Ryan Woods in the afternoon. We're also going to talk with current champion Ray Coble in the future. We're going to talk with past champion, 3-time champion, Amelia Boone on our episode 100. We are currently on 95 episodes. These 3 episodes today don't count toward our number as they are not brand new. You're welcome. There's nothing to thank me for, so you're welcome. Repealed. I mentioned Elite Week. Starts tomorrow with all new episodes every day until World's Toughest Mudder. So many episodes. You will have plenty of content to listen to on your plane ride or your car ride or your intercontinental yacht ride on your way to Atlanta. Before we start, don't forget, you can enter to win a free pair of Merrill Agility Peak Flex or Merrill All Out Crush 2.0s by texting the word TOUGH to the number 22828. That's the word TOUGH to the number 22828. Totally free. You should do it. It's time to talk Elite Pit Crewing with Gina Estrada. Let's go to the phones. Gina Estrada, tell me about your first World's Toughest Mudder.
Oh, wow. My first Worlds was in 2014, and I thought I was going into that pretty prepared in terms of training and everything, and I got there, and that was the year we had the sandstorm. So it was probably the worst weather that they'd ever seen in Vegas. By, I think, midnight, over 50% of the competitors had dropped out, and it was just, I kept going through the night. I ended up getting 40 miles that year. I did finish in really rough shape. I actually blacked out from hypothermia right after I finished the final lap that I was able to complete. I woke up in the med tent covered in heat blankets. My body just definitely shut down. I didn't have the right gear. I didn't have a thick enough wetsuit. So that was certainly a huge learning experience for me. And it kind of scared me a little bit, actually, from endurance events, but it definitely taught me a lot going through that and thinking kind of like I had it all together and realizing that I really didn't. But so it was quite an experience, my first Worlds.
Tell me about the collapsing. You had made it back to the pit area, and then you stopped?
Yeah, so what happened was I was in the lake because I couldn't do the cliff jump. I jumped the cliff twice in 2014, and then as the race goes on and your mind kind of starts breaking down along with your body, and you get tired, the thought of jumping off that cliff when it reopened, because in 2014, the way the rules went was the cliff closed at midnight. It didn't open at midnight. It actually closed, I think it was midnight or earlier, but it closed down for the night for the Black Ops, and then it reopened, I think it was whenever the sun started to come up. So I was on my last lap, and it was open, and the thought of doing the cliff jump, to me in my head, which thinking on it now, I probably should have just jumped the cliff and gotten it over with, but I was like, I'll just do the swim, and it was like a 1/4 mile swim. It was a long swim. I mean, of course, anything at that point seems long, but if I recall correctly, the penalty for not jumping the cliff was a pretty long swim all the way across the lake. And I think that at that point, because of how cold I was, it did me in. And I remember being in the middle of the lake and just thinking, don't pass out, just keep swimming, just get to the other side. You'll lose credit for the whole lap. I remember just thinking that. And then I remember as soon as I heard my timing chip go off, I don't remember anything after that. Maria, I don't know if you know Maria, they used to call her like Mother Hen, but she's like big in the Worlds community, but she ended up helping get me like into the tent, and I guess they had to like take off all my clothes and put heat blankets around me, and then I ended up waking up at that point and just my body was on fire, because once you start to heat up from like hypothermia, your body it hurts. It doesn't feel good at all. But I remember just it wasn't a good situation. I didn't finish that race up very strong.
How thick was your wetsuit?
I had a 3 mil, a 3.2, and it was too big. It definitely was ill-fitting. It definitely didn't fit the way a wetsuit should, and that was just terrible. That was terrible. And I also took 3 really long pit stops. I remember they were over 45 minutes. So I remember looking at my lap times and just being like, what the heck were you doing in your tent? But what I would do is I had 2 wetsuits. They were the same brand, and they both fit the same way, and they were 3.2s. I probably should have doubled them up, but what I did is change out my whole wetsuit and all my underclothes and everything. I remember doing that a couple times. So I think that was also my downfall. I thought that I needed to put on all dry stuff. I didn't realize that what you needed to do was just keep moving and don't just continue to move and maybe have an extra layer to put on the outside. But yeah, I mean, I thought, going into an endurance event when you've never done one ever, you just don't know anything. And even now I'm still learning new things, but I know just compared to then to now to what I know, it's crazy the amount that you think you're so prepared, but there's just so much that you can't know till you actually do it,
What's the biggest hypothermia lesson you took out of 2014?
Don't underestimate the temperature just because it's in Vegas. I think everybody did that a little bit just because, you're thinking, oh, Vegas, it's going to be hot, it's going to be warm. And, if last year, the difference in temperature was insane. I had a 5 millimeter wetsuit, and I had actually really prepared. I had a vest to put on over that and another shirt, if I needed it. And I was so hot. I remember I had to peel the top of my wetsuit down for part of the 4th lap or so. I was so hot. I was just so overheated. It was just such an opposite problem. So it's just come prepared for everything is really, I would say, it's the biggest lesson I learned. Just be prepared for any type of weather, hot and cold, because when it's in Vegas, it can be, I think it's like roll of the dice for the weather. So 2014 was the year that it was freezing with the high winds and everyone dropped out.
And then what did you do in 2015?
In 2015, I came to support my friends, Team Four Eyes, and Amelia Boone was running with them too, so I ended up supporting her. And that was an experience because I had never really done a lot of pit crew. I kind of thought I would, I'd have a pretty good idea of what they needed. They had a plan, which they shared. There were 3 of us that were pitting for all of them. So, I think it went okay. I think back and I'm like, I I could have done things a little bit differently, but you got to learn. You got to start somewhere and start learning on what it's like to support versus race. It's a whole different mindset and an idea. But what I liked most about pitting at an event like World's Toughest Mudder was like I am a runner. I love to run. Obviously, I train for running. And so what I was able to do a lot there was like run back and forth. So I'd be able to run out, find the people on course, kind of speak with them on how they were doing and what they were needed, and then run back to base, basically where they were going to be coming in, and tell them, oh, hey guys, like she says she needs this, or he says he needs that, and like, can we get that ready? So that's honestly what I enjoyed most about pitting for like an event like World's Toughest Mudder. Like that was, and I think that was where I could contribute the most, was going out and finding them and seeing how they were doing, and then, reporting back, because it was just required a lot of running. I think I wore my Garmin for that race, and I ended up running like 26, 27 miles, something like that, something crazy, like almost a marathon distance just in that 24 hours running back and forth. So, but I enjoyed it, and it kept me awake.
I've heard of other crews doing that. Now, you can't actually help them on course, but you can get information.
Oh, no. You can't give them anything. You can't take anything from them. You're not allowed. Like, I would, if they collapsed in front of me, there'd be no ability. I mean, obviously they would be off, but you can't help them in terms of like handing them anything, taking anything, or, and also there's blocked off areas where you can't be as a crew member, I believe. I don't know how the rules are now, because obviously things have kind of, I think, gotten a little bit tighter since 2015. But I know that like I was able to just go out and like, if I saw them at an obstacle, for example, I would be like, oh, hey, like, how are you guys doing? Can I get you anything? Like they'd be like, oh, Walter needs a new swim cap next lap. His is, has a hole or is falling apart. I remember that just as an example. So then I'd run back to the base and be like, hey guys, can you make sure you have Walter's other swim cap like already? So when they came in, they would just have the things that they needed prepared, and then the pit would be a lot quicker that way. And that's honestly, but yeah, no, you're absolutely correct that you can't be handing them things or taking things from them. That's against the rules. So,
we'll jump back into pit crew in a sec, but in 2016, you went back to running World's Toughest.
Yeah, I think I got a little scared in 2014. I think anybody who finished the way I did probably would have. And I kind of lost a little confidence. But, yeah, I went back and I trained pretty hard, and I tried, I think it was important for me to go back and overcome some fears that I had and to finish strong, and I did end up doing that. I wasn't able to overcome my fear of the cliff, unfortunately, which still eats at me today. I didn't even jump off the cliff once. I ended up getting 50 miles. I ran with penalties. I ran closer, I believe, to 62-ish miles. So I definitely took penalties, because by like the end of lap 5, I wasn't making like any of the gripping obstacles. I made obviously there's some obstacles you have to make, but a lot of the gripping obstacles, my hands swelled up like balloons. Yeah, there's always a problem every race, I feel like. Like, you got to learn what works for you. Like, I think my wetsuit was a little too tight in the arms, which made my hands swell up pretty bad. And when they swell up, they don't really work that well. Shocking. But yeah, so that happened to me in 2016. But I was able to, even though I wasn't able to jump the cliff, I still was able to get 50 miles and finish strong. I remember every detail of that race. I remember every part of the course. I never felt really sick or bad or anything. So to me, that was an accomplishment, just to be able to finish, in a strong way and enjoy myself. Really, I truly did enjoy myself. In 2015, I had a really good time. I mean, in 2016, running. So,
how did you feel going into 2016, knowing how 2014 ended for you?
Well, it was important for me to just get back on that course. It was between me and that course in 2016. Just getting back out there and doing it again, and knowing that I had prepared a lot better. Knowing that my gear, I had tested it. I had gone in freezing cold lakes like a month before with my wetsuit and swam, and I had tested everything that I had, so I knew how my gear fit. I knew, unfortunately, the arm thing, that kind of happened later, but besides that, I knew that I was far more prepared going in, and I think that just made me feel a lot safer. And also, but then it was also important for me just to prove to myself that I could get back out there after finishing the way I did and do it again. And I did that. I accomplished that, and that made me proud. So I was happy.
How did you feel when you crossed the finish line, hypothermia free?
I was hot actually when I crossed the finish line, and I ended up crossing with Wesley, who we have the same running coach, so we've talked a lot. Wesley Kerr, he ended up finishing, I believe, 4th, and he was there when I was going to cross the finish line, so we ended up crossing together. That was a fun. He's like, I want to cross the finish line with you, and just because we've done a lot of the same training drills and a lot of the same running stuff over the year, and so we talked a lot, and it was just that was neat. I enjoyed it, and it was I was happy to be nice and warm, and the sun was shining. It was already warm when we were crossing, so I was really happy with that, and obviously happy to get my brown bib. That was exciting for me, so I was happy.
So this year, with the introduction of Toughest Mudder, you've kind of become the elite pit crew lady. Tell me how that developed. I'm a Goat Tough ambassador. Goat Tough's the brand that Jim Campbell's trying to take off the ground. Well, he has really taken off the ground this year. Just kind of committed to helping other people and living your life. One of the hashtags that we use a lot is no day wasted. And that's just living every day to the fullest and, being an example for not in a holy as thou way or anything, but just living your life in a way that other people want to do the same, and I think that's a good goal for anyone, but I think that's what he's sort of trying to base having the athletes and the brand around. So there was a race and they needed a pit crew person in Atlanta. And so I was free that weekend. So I was like, hey, I'll come do it. And he's like, awesome. That's great. I need you to pit for the team. And he has, it was for Ryan and for Lindsay and for Trevor and, these top people. So of course going in, I was like, oh, I don't want to screw up. I want to do a good job. But yeah, so I ended up pitting for them in Atlanta and I knew that there were, some of them are going to be in Pennsylvania. So Jim was like, we need another pit person. I was like, I can come down. So I went down for that. And then I'm going to be in Chicago. I wasn't able to go to Whistler just because it's such a long trip for a short amount of time. And I have a job, I have a real job that I have to be available for too on weekends because I'm in the medical profession. So that kind of, that didn't work out, but I am going to Chicago and I'm excited for that. And then Allison ended up needing help, and Allison Kai needed help in Atlanta. And even though she's not part of, Pennsylvania, and even though she's not part of Goat Tough, I knew I would be capable of helping her, as well. So it's not that I'm just a Goat Tough person. If my friends need help, obviously I'm going to help them as well. That's just how it is. So, I've known Allison for a couple of years now, so that ended up working out well there for me to help her as well. So I've enjoyed it. It's been extremely informative to me. I've learned so much. These are obviously top athletes. This isn't their first rodeo. They know exactly what they need. So it's kind of simple to follow as well because they're able to kind of tell me exactly what they need. I mean, Ryan has it down to what he needs every lap. He's extremely organized. He knows what he wants, and that's extremely helpful to me because all I have to do is keep track of, okay, on lap 4, he wants a new battery for his headlamp, and you just got to make sure you have that out and you're able to hand it right to him. Obviously, you have to be on top of it because they're in the lead. They don't want to be screwing around, having you take 5 minutes trying to find that battery they told you they wanted on lap 4, but the fact that they are so organized and that they know exactly what they need is super helpful, and kind of makes it fail-proof in a lot of ways. I think I'm able to juggle a lot. My job working as a cardiac tech really helps with being able to juggle high stress and a lot of prioritizing. And I think that's why I'm able to do maybe more than 1 or 2 people. I know that I've been pitting for 4 or 5 people at a time, and
it's chaotic because it's, you're trying to keep track of not only what they need every lap, but you're trying to keep track of their lap times, their gap times. If they're, close with someone else, they want to know how many minutes down to seconds sometimes. I mean, there's been some really close races between one was Allison and Lindsay, and one was Trevor and, oh my gosh, I can't remember his name. But anyway, there's been some close races where you just got to really keep track of the gaps for them because they want to know. And that's probably the most stressful part for me, trying to keep track of all the gaps and the lap times and figure out when they're going to be coming in so you can have what they need ready. But I find it fun and exhilarating and exciting. And so that's probably why, I'm able to do it because I just think it's really fun and it energizes me. I get the energy from the racers. I enjoy racing, but I also enjoy watching the races take place. My heart beats faster. Like, I get so excited. So, I remember in Pennsylvania just watching Trevor close like a 9-minute gap and then take the lead, and that was just insane. That was just so exciting to me, just to watch that like live. I just got so pumped up just watching it because it's so exciting. So like I don't really feel tired or anything doing it. I'm like so into it the whole time. But
Gina,
it's fun. It's a great time.
Can you talk about the preparation? You mentioned some of the communication you do, like where they tell you, I'm going to want this on this lap, this on that lap.
Yep.
What kind of preparation do you do before the race starts?
I email them. Whoever I know that I'm going to pit for, I try to touch base with them once or twice before, like the week leading into the race, just to see how they're feeling, if there's any injury, if they've been sick. It's good to know, like Chris Mendoza had a horrible cold leading into Pennsylvania, so I kind of was, it's just good to be aware of what's going on with them like the week before. I think maybe everyone wouldn't think that way, but I kind of take this maybe to like a different level, but I just think it's good to know like what's going on with them, like how they're feeling and what, so I try to get that sense from them like before, just by like touching base, being like, hey, what's up? Like, how are you? Just something quick. And they're so nice and like appreciative, and they always get back to me right away and talk to me. So I'm always like appreciative of that too, just because it's not there. That's, for me, it's making my job a little bit easier. In terms of before the race, Ryan and Lindsay, they just want you to meet with them like 15 when they're in the pit right before the race. So probably like they get there an hour before-ish, and they just spell out what they need. And Ryan told me what he wanted every lap, and Lindsay kind of just showed me where their stuff was. And a lot of it was moving things from one section to a closer section where we ended up actually setting up the pit area. But yeah, it was pretty clear what they wanted, and so I just tried to keep that in mind, and I was able to remember what they needed. And then there's certain things they take, like a swig of Pedialyte or an Advil or certain Pepto, or who knows what they might want, but keeping all that stuff just kind of like handy on me somewhere. Like I had a little backpack where I just had stuff in it, so if they were like, oh, I want this, like I could just reach in there and grab it and just kind of be close and not have to be shuffling for a lot of things. I created a thing called a pit kit. That's what I call it, just a quick name, but I just put everything in there that I would ever think that anyone could need. I think that's why I was able to help so many people in Pennsylvania, because I just had, I keep things like scissors, a knife, Aquaphor, painkillers, rollers, gas pills, Imodium, Pepto, anti-chafing cream, extra batteries, extra headlamps, ice, what was I going to say? Allergy medication, nasal decongestant, Tylenol, like salt pills, anything that I can think, Red Bull, water, like extra shot blocks. Like Austin ran out of shot blocks. His dad came over and he was like, oh, do you have any extra of these? Like, because that's what Austin was using for fuel. Because I knew that because I had messaged with him before, asking him what he was going to be like eating and drinking and all that. And he told me. So like just knowing like, oh, I have a few extra of these. So I was able to give extra to his dad, who was there pitting as well. And so he had enough. So it's just kind of like knowing ahead of time what could go wrong. And I think part of having raced and seen it, I know like kind of like what I need. Like if someone needs Imodium, it's nice to just be able to like hand it to them, like not have to go search 50 places. Like, does anybody have Imodium? Yeah. So, you know, I did create that kit, and honestly, like it's sitting right here in my garage, and I'm like, I'm just going to take that to any race I go to because I think it's perfect just to have all that stuff.
Tell me more about that pit kit. Is that like a fishing tackle box? Is it how do you carry that around?
Yeah, well, I just, you know what? I used a plastic, like, just a storage container with a lid. That's it. That's all it is. It's waterproof, obviously, but it's just a plastic bin with a lid, and I just wrote pit kit on it, and anything, even like, I'm constantly thinking, and like sometimes I'll just in the middle of the day be like, oh, that would be good for the pit kit, and I'll just like stick it in there. And then I just have a list of everything I have in there, just so I know. And then like rope, like a lot of people lose their headlamps when they jump in some of those water obstacles, like hang time. Any of those, like people are I noticed some people tie their headlamps to their bib so that it doesn't fall off and you don't lose it. So I just put like extra rope in there. So like if anybody wants to do that, it's a good suggestion in case you're prone to lose your headlamp. But who would think of that? You know what I mean? I mean, that's stuff you're not really thinking of when you're thinking about the race and you're thinking about, you know, running and all these other things. But in my head, I'm like, oh, well, because I'm calm and I'm able to think about all the other stuff, like that's kind of like my job is to think of all the stuff that they might not think of. And I think that makes a good pit person. If you're always thinking ahead a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I think everyone should have a pit kit if you're and I'm sure a lot of people do. You know, I'm sure I know a lot of my friends that have done these races a ton, and they have all their supplies and gear. You know, they know what they need. But for me, it's just, I know that I have it. So if someone's looking for something that they might not have that they might not have thought of, I know that I have it in the kit. So I know, like, someone came over to me and asked for Imodium, and I was able to just give it to them. And that, to me, makes me feel good because I'm helping them, and I don't have to go searching or asking anybody else for Imodium. I need to add chewing gum to the kit. I just thought of it because someone asked me for chewing gum, and I didn't have any. That's, as we're talking here, I just thought of that.
How big physically is your pit kit? How much space does it take up?
The size of a shoebox. So it's not that big. That's for like all the medications and like any of the first aid stuff. And then like Red Bull, water, Pedialyte, all that. I mean, that's just basic stuff that I bring extra of if I can. But as far as like the actual like little things, like I have all like the meds are very small, like any of the medications that anyone might need or batteries. I mean, none of that really takes up a lot of room, but it's about the size of an oversized shoebox, I would say, is my pit kit. So it's pretty small. But it's like gold if you need something out of it.
It is like gold.
Mm-hmm.
As far as other pre-race stuff, do the athletes tell you their mileage goals? Are they looking for help with timing from you?
No. I mean, you got to think about these people. They know what they're doing. I mean, Ryan, Lindsay, Trevor, Allison, they know Chikorita. I mean, they know what they're capable of, most of them, and they're in their own, you know, and that's not, I would feel so weird. I feel weird even talking about it just because they're like, to me, I have to like tuck my fangirl card away. Like I can't be like sitting there starstruck, like, oh my God, like I'm watching Ryan and Lindsay and Allison and like all these like amazing athletes that like, I just find what they do so amazing, and I'm trying to help them with their race. So I have to like tuck that little card away, you know, pretend like I'm all cool and like, oh, cool. Here you go, Lindsay. Here you go, Trevor. Like, and in my head, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Like, I'm getting to watch you, you know. So that's my dork side right there. But I think that anyone would be lying if you do this at all, or you've been involved in any of the obstacle racing. I mean, Amelia, any of these people that are just, they're who made the sport, and just to watch them and be able to see what they do is pretty incredible when I think on it, you know. It's pretty awesome. I'm pretty lucky. I feel really lucky and like blessed that I've gotten to do this at all. It's been such a so much fun for me, really. I've really enjoyed it.
So during the race, what happens when the athlete comes in from the lap?
It all depends who it is. So it's helpful after I've done one race for them, because now I feel like I know a lot more. Like Trevor, I've gotten to pit for him twice for 2 races. And he, for Atlanta and Pennsylvania. So I really know him the best almost, because I've gotten to see him race for 16 hours. And I know how he operates and what he needs, which is he needs very little. But there's certain things that he wants at certain times. Like he'll want his swim cap at a certain time if it's like hot weather. Like usually on lap 3 or 4, he's taking his swim cap. If usually on laps in the middle of the maybe 5, he's coming in and he wants his pack refilled, and his pack is difficult to get undone. So he had to teach me how to, slide off his little bag where he keeps his little mixture that he has and put that in, and then it's a delicate little pack. So that, just learning that now, like knowing that I know how to do that makes me feel better. So stuff like that. So it just depends. Ryan and Lindsay come in every lap pretty much. Ryan usually wants to know his gap. He wants Pedialyte and a swig of, he takes something with him on the course that he drinks on the way, and, he wants certain things, but he tells you before, and he knows exactly what it is. And he basically, when he comes in, he just wants that and he's out. I mean, his pits are literally, they're under 30 seconds. He wasn't in for longer than 30 seconds in Atlanta. And that's when he got 50 miles. So that was, he was moving, and it was in and out. So, and then Lindsay, she usually wants like more options. She's kind of like, she wants to just see what she has, and she'll take what she needs, but her pits are real quick too. She usually just wants to know her gap, and that's it. And Allison, she's super easy as well. She wants her options laid out so she can easily grab what she wants. And then, she'll tell you, like, can you help me take off my jacket? Or can you make sure that next lap I have this ready for me, or I want my red bull? She'll tell you, and then you just prepare that for the next time. So it's kind of just, you kind of have to be good on the fly. Like there's been a couple times, like Ryan's headlamp got stuck to his bib, and they told him to put on the leader bib, and so we had no way to he almost took off without his headlamp, which would have been a disaster. Luckily, this lady was standing right next to me with scissors, so she cut it off. It literally took a second, but I was panicking for a minute, and then I was like, I will never not have scissors on me, because, all it took is 1 second to cut that cord, but if you don't have the scissors right there available, like right on you, it's, it could have turned into like a 5-minute disaster, which at that point in the race, I think his gap was only like under 4 minutes. So that would have been, you don't want to lose time at that point. Well, he doesn't. So those are things to just, they're learning experiences from little panic moments. The athletes probably don't even remember, but I've remembered, because I'm like, oh, never not have scissors. Always have scissors on you, something to cut something.
You mentioned the gap. You mentioned the gap a few times. How do you keep track of all the gaps for all your different athletes?
Okay. Well, I'm still learning this, but it's depending on how many, I have 3 watches that are timing usually. So what I'll do, what I'm trying to do is keep track of their lap time. So when they go out of the pit, I'll hit start so I know that they left, and then I'll keep track of who I'm keeping track of on each watch, and then I'll usually write it down. But that, like, probably 3/4 through the race usually goes out the window, because I'm trying to do so many things. Luckily, I've had, like, really good people help me. My friend Stephanie came down with me to Pennsylvania, and also in Pennsylvania, Lou Fisher, his 2 brothers, came down and helped pit for him, but then they ended up helping me as well. So it's definitely, as much as I love to, like, trying to do it all, it's very helpful to have a couple other people, because then I can be like, okay, can you guys tell me like how many, like what this lap is for this person, and how, so that way I can tell them, because it is helpful. I mean, at one point Allison was down, I think she was almost behind by like 10 minutes, and then she ended up getting 40 minutes up into the lead. So keeping track of her times was like really important. So when she came in, I could tell her, oh, hey, you're like 30 minutes up now, which to her, it doesn't mean relax, but for her, that's a big deal to like say, okay, you're up by 30, 40 minutes now instead of behind 10, so that was like a big thing. And it's difficult, but because the website that they give you too isn't always up to date. It's dragging behind. So you can't really depend on that. You really have to use your own timing devices. So the 3 watches that I have definitely help do that, as well as having a couple people around you that are going to be reliable and able to help you. That helped me too a lot because it's a ton to keep track of. But they do. It's important. It's an important part of the job to be like, when they come in, to be able to say, they ask what their gap is. It's good to know, okay, well, this person just left the pit and you're coming in now. So 2 minutes, a minute, 40 seconds. I mean, it's been as close as 45 seconds before. So those are important things. I don't want to mess up, obviously, for them. This is their job. This is what they do. So it's a lot. I feel like a lot of pressure. I don't want to get it wrong, but that's just kind of like I put it on myself. But I think it's just important to have a means to be able to do it and keep track of it, at least for them. So
you're keeping track of your athletes, but you're also keeping track of their competition.
Trying. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. And it is helpful at Toughest because they have everyone pits in kind of the same area. So it's not like I'm having to figure out, it's not a secret when one of the competitors comes in. Usually they'll announce it and I'll see that person come in as well, even if I'm not pitting for them. So that's helpful as well, just because I can physically lay eyes on the other person, usually the way it's been set up. So. And
sometimes you've got the top 2 or 3 people. You're the pit crew for the top 2 or 3 athletes, so you know exactly what's going on.
Yeah. Well, you're in the quick pit. That's fun when they move you over to the quick pit and you got to move all the stuff. And that's another thing, is reminding them that we're moving to the quick pit. Because Lindsay at one point went running by when we had moved to the quick pit. I had forgotten to remind her that we were going to be moving. So I saw her sprinting to the old place. And like everyone was yelling and she didn't hear anyone till like the last second. So she had to turn around and come back. But then she knew, but it's just like, I was like, oh yeah, next time remind her when you're moving that like the lap before, remind your athletes that they're going to be moving to the quick pit in the next lap so they know not to go sprinting by, because the whole point is to make it quicker, right? In the quick pit.
They introduced the quick pits at Toughest Mudder Atlanta. Tell me about the quick pits.
Okay, so the quick pits, they're like almost like when you let horses out of a gate or dogs in a dog race. They're like, it's like a fence like that with like gated off areas, and they have these pre-printed name tags that are actually really cool, and they put them on the outside of the quick pit. So you've got first male and female, second male and female, third male and female, and I think it goes down to fifth. I think they give the first 5 spots the quick pits. So you just move all the stuff over, whatever that is that you've been using for your athletes. I usually have a little setup. So like whatever they've been eating or whatever the things they want for the last 2 to 3 laps, you just got to move all that stuff over to the quick pit. So when they run in, they literally, all they do is lean over real quick. They can talk to you for a second and then get what they need and take off. That's another time when they're looking, a lot of times they're looking for strategy, which is something new that I learned. I didn't really know. Like, there is a strategy behind the whole, but they want to know if they need to go back out for another full lap or if they have enough grace to not go back out for another full lap. They want to know kind of like what they're kind of looking for. Like, I think they know what they're going to do anyway, but they're kind of at that point in the race, it's the end. They're tired. They've given a lot, and I think that it's helpful when they have a little bit of like a reasoning voice or something to be like, oh, you need to do this. Like, usually it's not me, actually. Like, there'll be someone from Obstacle Race Media or another, there'll be one of their friends that maybe hadn't, like Mendoza in Pennsylvania had stopped racing because he was so sick, but he stood with me in the quick pit for Trevor. And when Trevor came in and they needed to make a call, like Mendoza was able to like talk to him and tell him. So like, I was thankful for that, because that's something that that's helpful to have another voice of like kind of like reasoning on what they should be doing, at that point in terms of racing anyone or how close they are with somebody else. So that's another whole part of that I hadn't even experienced till I started, watching these elite people. So
that's actually a big part at the end of the race is the decision if do I need to go out for one more lap? In Whistler, there was a difference between Robert Killian getting second or third place as he went out for one more lap and he managed to get back in time.
Yeah. So there you go. I know it's a huge thing. And even Ryan getting that 50 miles in Atlanta, just him deciding whether. And honestly, I've watched it kind of go both ways because they were like, oh, you have to go back out because if this guy comes in the next 2 minutes and then goes back out. But I mean, Ryan was just so far ahead that I don't even think that would have mattered. But it just, you never know, especially when someone they don't know is like really close behind them. Like, I don't think anybody knew who that second place person was in Atlanta. Well, Ryan didn't know who he was. So he wasn't on his radar as to like who, like, why would I go out for, like, cause I remember he was like, who? Cause Phoebe Brimmer, she was telling him, so-and-so he's going to go back out for another lap and he's going to catch you. And Ryan was like, who? But it's like, just because it's like, it's hard, I think, when you're that into the race too, to just kind of make those calls. But I think it is helpful when someone's telling you at least the facts as to what's going on, and then they make their own decisions. Obviously, they're very experienced and they know what they're doing. So I think that it's just helpful to know the facts of where the other people are, and then they can make a decision what they want to do.
So toward the end of the race, what happens when you send them out for their last lap?
Well, Lindsay in Atlanta wanted to be told if Allison didn't go back out for another lap because she wanted to come back. Because there's like a point in time when they're allowed to stop running. So they don't get credit for like starting that lap, but they can stop running the course and not be like penalized or anything. So like Lindsay, so I like kind of I was like, in case anybody wants to know if I can catch Lindsay Webster, the answer is no, I cannot. Because I went trying to find her once we realized Allison wasn't going out for another lap, but she was already long gone, and she ended up just completing the lap and getting, I think, didn't she get that 45 miles at Atlanta, I believe, which was just crazy. She's so awesome. That's just amazing, 45 miles. But, yeah, she ended up just finishing the lap. So she said, oh, I just decided to finish it, but I felt bad because I couldn't find her in time to tell her, oh, Allison didn't go back out, so you don't need to go back out if you don't want to. But, I mean, honestly, I think the last lap, most of them are just wanting to be done. At that point, they just want to, like, hurry up and get it over with. I've actually seen most of them get a burst of energy and just want to get it over with and get done, especially Allison. She was just like, get me out of here. She took a little Red Bull shot on her last lap, and that was it. She just wanted to be done, I think.
What do you do for them when they're done with the race?
Clean up all the quick pits. I try to get all the stuff back organized and set up back together. I mean, in Pennsylvania, I drove, so I had my little table. I had all my stuff all separated and all out in like different bins. I had people's gear like set up because I helped a few other people too. My friends, like Jesse Bruce, ended up finishing fifth, but I like helped pit for him a little bit because he didn't have a pit crew. So I set him up a little station, even though I couldn't like be there for him every time he came in. I set up his station and was like, take this at this time and just set it up for him. So when he came in, he just had to take that. And then whoever else needed a little bit of help, I was trying to, spread myself around because it was easy because I had all my stuff in my car because I was able to drive. In Atlanta, it was a little more difficult because I flew there. This is what I'm going to do in Chicago, too. But I think I'm condensing the pit kit small enough that it'll fit in my suitcase. And I don't really need very much. I'm just going for 2 days, so it shouldn't be a problem. But at the end of the race, it's just really cleaning up. I do bake cookies. I like to do that. I found that those are a big hit at races, fresh baked cookies. So I've brought those and I pass them around at the end of the race. Very helpful. I think it's extremely helpful for them.
I believe it.
And they've all been like, Gina, your cookies. So now I have to make them for like every race.
What are your plans for World's Toughest this year? Are you going to pit or are you going to run?
I'm not going to run. I think I'm really getting into ultra trail running and kind of going more in that direction for now with my own training and running, obviously, because I love training. I love training more than I love racing. It's a huge part of my life, and I love it so much. But as far as Worlds is concerned, I think I might be done with that race as far as doing it, but I cringe at saying that because I've said that before. I said that after 14, and then I ended up going back in 16. So I just think for this year, I think I'm going to end up pitting. I would like to do kind of more on-course work again, and I think that might work out because, like, Trevor has his sister and his brother-in-law and his girlfriend. I don't know if she's going to run or not, but he had, and then Lindsay and Ryan usually have Ryan's sister and her husband, although or her boyfriend. I'm not sure what's going on with that this year, but I kind of think that they have a lot of good base people, but it'd be really helpful to have someone that's like able to like run and like check in with them, like kind of like what I did in 15. And that just was a lot of fun to me. So we'll see if that works out. I've been asked by a couple of people too, who are probably like in the competitor. They've asked me, like they've messaged me and asked me if I would pit for them for Worlds. So I haven't given anybody like an answer. I'm just kind of like waiting to see, but I think that most likely I'll be in the pit. I'm not sure for who. But I think I'm most likely going to be doing that because I've had some people ask me, and then it's exciting to me. I enjoy it, and I still get to be around that whole atmosphere. I love Tough Mudder. I love what it's done for my life. Some of my best friends are in that community. So, anytime I can be around them and be there, it's exciting for me. So I definitely enjoy it.
What do you think? What do you think some differences are going to be between the 8-hour and the 24-hour pit crew?
Well, 24-hour pit crew is just a lot more detail. It's a whole different animal. 8 hours versus 24. I mean, you've just got so many more variables, and so many more just things that they're going to need, you know. And I think just being more prepared. You have to think. I mean, it's 3 times the length. But I honestly, at the same time, I think that the way that some of these competitors, and they've done it before. I mean, these are pro athletes. They know what they're doing. You know, that they're smart and they're prepared, and this is what they do. So in a lot of ways, it's a lot easier to pit for them because they know what they need versus honestly, like if you tried to pit for me in 2014, it would have been such a nightmare for anybody because I had no idea what I needed. I had no idea what I was doing, you know? So it's like, it's almost, it's interesting, but you know, they've really come far. My friend Maddie started the orphan tent, and that's run by this girl, Tracy. I don't know if you've ever heard of that at Worlds, the orphan tent at World's Toughest Mudder. But that's, you know, they set that up as like kind of a pit option for anybody who doesn't have a pit crew. And I mean, I've seen what they do in terms of checklists and everything. They want to know when the person peed and when the last time they ate was and how much if they took ibuprofen, if they took that, you know, keeping the checklist they have for that tent over there is amazing. I was super impressed when I saw it. I was like, this is great. And they're keeping track of everyone individually. So I think, you know, just you got to it's a lot more attention to detail for the 24 hours. And I think it's also just like staying up and being on it for 24 hours. 8 hours is one thing, but 24 hours I think it's just, you know, you got to take care of yourself too. That's the thing with pitting is you can't just neglect yourself. I mean, I have my own schedule of when I take a Red Bull shot and when I eat a snack and when I have all that stuff right on me so that I'm taking care of myself through the night as well, because if you don't, you're not going to be any use if you're, you know, starving and falling asleep and, you know, cranky. That's really not going to be any help to anyone that you're trying to help. So I can't stress that enough, that I think it's really important if you're supporting an athlete in any way that you also are taking care of yourself, because, you know, that's important to take care of yourself so you can help them. So
you mentioned You mentioned in 2015 there were a couple mistakes that you made that you... Can you talk about those?
Well, and it also stemmed down to, like, so I was sitting for Amelia, and I leaned over. I remember just asking her, I was like, what do you want? Like, what are you going to need? She's like, oh, I need a snack. Like, I want something with fat in it. And I was like, something with fat in it? You have to think, this is probably, like, it's in the morning because it was light out. So I'm thinking it was probably, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, I don't know, but near the end of the race. So I go running in to tell them that she wants something with fat in it. And they're like, give her some corn chowder. The poor girl. So we hand her corn chowder. I will never forget this. I will never forget the look on her face. She took one sip of it and, like, basically just spit it out and was like, what the heck was that? And they were like, corn chowder, like all the people that were around. And she's like, corn chowder. Like, so this other kid comes running over, Isan, our other friend, he comes running over with peanut butter, and she's like, oh, exactly what I wanted. But, like, I had no idea. I couldn't think of, like, what she, obviously she couldn't think of exactly what she wanted. But I definitely was, just because I wasn't able to think, like, oh, what would someone who had been running for, in that moment? Because you just got to think your mind's going a million miles an hour, too. So now I just know, you don't give someone corn chowder when they ask for a snack at like 8 o'clock in the morning. It's not really a snack of choice.
I have so many questions right now. Who brought corn chowder?
Okay, the Four Eyes tent had corn chowder in it because we had little battery. I think it was battery pack, something that was warming up things with battery. I don't know, but it was still in the rules because there's all these rules of stuff you can't have. And I know that it was still, I don't want to say but it was like a little warm packed up thing of soup. Or maybe it was in a thermos. I think it was in a thermos now that I think of it. So they handed her the corn. They were all done, Four Eyes at that point, because they ended up suffering some hypothermia that year as well. But so they were like, oh, give her corn chowder. And I didn't even think that probably wasn't a good option. But let me tell you, the look on that girl's face, I knew right when I handed it to her that was a bad option. It was so funny, too, because I was in Atlanta, and I texted her, and I was like, I'm pitting tonight. And I was like, don't worry, I won't give them corn chowder. She was laughing. That was just so funny.
That is hilarious.
Poor Amelia. Oh, well. She was a good sport about it. We laugh now, but that was not a good thing. Peanut butter is a better option. That's the moral of the story.
Gina, Estrada, any last thoughts on World's Toughest Mudder or pit crewing?
No. I think everyone should run an obstacle course race and everyone should pit for an endurance event. I think it's a great life experience, but, that's me. I just think that it's great. It's a great... I think it's a cool way to be involved. Pit crewing is a cool way to be involved and kind of be doing it, but not be, miserable. Totally miserable. That would be totally miserable. Oh, yeah. It's fun. I'm having fun.
Special thanks to Gina Estrada for appearing in this episode. Well done, Gina. Back live again. Don't forget, Elite Week kicks off tomorrow afternoon with Ryan Woods. Ryan has had a crazy last 12 months. We talk about that in our phone call. Ryan tomorrow will be episode 96. Episode 100 will be with the 3-time World's Toughest Champion, Amelia Boone. Hey, here's a fun idea. We could celebrate 100 episodes together by writing each other iTunes reviews. What? Just open the Purple Podcast app on your iPhone or iPad, search for World's Toughest Podcast, click our logo, then scroll down to click Write a Review, and I will read it on a future episode. How fun is that? Yeah! We will talk tomorrow. Go spend time with someone you love.